What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Links and Locks podcast, the betting edition. I'm Jason Sobel from GolfBet. He is Ben Everill from the PGA Tour's digital team, and we're here to break down the WGC Dell Technologies match play at Austin Country Club. Benny, you're in Austin. I know you had to evacuate today, which is Monday. We've got only one more day of practice because remember, this starts on a Wednesday this week. Any more weather supposed to come in there? Or are we going to be safe and clear?
Yeah, we should be clear from now on, but yeah, pretty strange day. We've had lots of little intermittent rain, lots of wind, and expected big storm this afternoon. So they kicked us out of there. They were saying there might be hail the size of golf balls and other things at one point, but haven't seen any of that personally yet. Just some miserable stuff. But it's supposed to clear up tonight. Ready for tomorrow's day, full day of practice. And as you said, we start on Wednesday. So make sure you guys are ready to rumble nice and early this week because all the action starts on Wednesday. So. And plenty of it happening as well.
Absolutely. One of the best days in golf, at least the best Wednesday in golf. Certainly. I like how hail is always described in golf ball terms also. You never hear a hail like a baseball or hail like a chestnut. It's always hail like a golf ball. So yeah, good to know that the weather is just going to fly through there and we should be okay for this thing. All right, let's get to it. We're going to play 18 holes, make 18 bets for this week's match play championship. Benny, you're on the tee for the first hole.
Well, I'm going to go with something that I haven't even seen a market for yet, but I'm going to say that this is my lock, smashing it out there from the start. On the first day, you'll see a matchup between Marc Leishman and Kevin Kisner.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw everything at Marc Leishman, despite the fact that Kevin Kisner is a runner-up and champion of this event, despite the fact that the front nine, especially in this course, really suits Kevin Kisner. There is some bad blood, some stuff going on between those two.
Really?
That is Leishman fired up for this. I know he'll be fired up. Cast your mind back, 2017 President's Cup, Mickelson and Kisner against Day and Leishman. On the 18th green, Phil makes a putt that guarantees at least a half, and then the two of them start what they call the Three Amigos dance, and I've got another not so affectionate name for it, where they thrust at each other, forgetting that Leishman still had a putt to potentially tie that match. Now, they took great offense. Leishman missed that putt, and they lost that match by one up on that 18th green. And it was part of a rout that week. But let me tell you, he's been stewing on that ever since. And I expect that this could be a grudge match that people don't expect coming. And so I'm going to go big on my Aussie mate. I know he'll be absolutely fired up on Wednesday.
Ladies and gentlemen, there he is, the Aussie Whisperer. He comes from a land down under. So when he says Marc Leishman, listen to Marc Leishman. I know a lot of people are going to like Kevin Kisner this week, but that is some very good intel right there. Okay, hole number 2, and I'm going to start out with my first 4 holes. I'll tell you right off the bat are going to be players to make it out of their respective groups, and I think there's some good value in these. I'm going to start with Group 9. My favorite player to make it out of any group. I don't like Bryson DeChambeau coming out of Pool A this week, coming off that wrist injury, still kind of working his way into shape. I don't really like Lee Westwood or Richard Bland, the other 2 guys in this group, very much, which leaves Taylor Gooch. Last year, he was the lowest ranked player to make it into the field. Didn't play great, but I like the fact that he's got some experience in this format, some experience on this golf course already at plus 225. I love Gooch to make it out of that group, and I'll be talking some more Gooch later on as we move on throughout the our holes here on the podcast.
That's so interesting, mate, because that was one of the hardest groups I found to pick whatsoever. And really? I didn't end up going with the Gooch man, but I have no good reason. So okay. Other than I went with Westwood just for, experience in the format, but he's ancient these days. So, I can't mount a good argument against your Gooch call.
Yeah, interesting. Gooch was like one of the first ones that I looked at and said, okay, there's a guy that should win this.
And there you go. And look, you've given a precursor to what you've got coming. I'll say that the back 9 for me will feature potential group winners and guys out of each area, if you will, rather than the group themselves. We have A players, B players, C players, and D players in each group. Now, on average, let me tell you, since we've gone to that, the round of 16 will have probably 5 players out of Group A players. It'll actually have 4 players from Group D and Group B, and only 3 from Group C. So sort of keep an eye on those D players.
Ben, last year, one player from Group A,
Yes.
from the Pool A, advanced to the round of 16. Jon Rahm was the only one, and 8 players, half of the Pool D'ers, made it into the round of 16, which is crazy.
Yeah, like honestly, like the seedings, if you will, overall matches last year, the worst seed, if you will, actually won more times than the better seed in last year's tournament. It was a bit of a throw. It was a different one. It was different for the books. And look, as I said, that we still average, say, 5 A players going, despite the fact only one went in last year. So I'm going to sort of still think that we're going to get some A players through this year, but who knows? It's just anyone in this field can beat anyone. 18 holes. It's not 4 rounds. It's just let's go. So I'll go
it's
to
like
hole
the
3.
NCAA March Madness having not just St. Peter's, but 6 other teams just like St. Peter's with similar seeds getting through to the round of 16. It doesn't happen in that sport. Maybe you get 1 each year, 2 each year, something like that. Here, it's going to happen.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to sort of look at some of my long shot, if you will, and that's I'm just looking at guys that over 100 or 90 to 1 or something or other, and might have a chance.
Sure.
If you want to do some sprinkling. Now, look, this is a name that'll come from nowhere for a lot of you, but Mackenzie Hughes, 130 to 1. Why would I pick him in DJ's group, Max Homa, Matthew Wolf, as a person to maybe look at? Quite simply because he's one of only a very few players in this field that has actually won over 30% of holes he's played at Austin Country Club over a select period of time. Look, he has a lot of wins. He's just had a few losses as well in those holes, right? He hasn't, but he knows how to play the course. So at 130 to 1, he's someone that you could sprinkle and have a look at. That if he catches DJ a little sleepy in that first match, which is what it is on Wednesday, he could be one who surprises. Another one to look at in the long shot is Keegan Bradley, 90 to 1. Also, I think coming out of the Jordan Spieth, Rose, Adam Scott group. Now, Spieth to me should come good out of there. He seems to do well when he goes mono a mono, but he also makes a lot of mistakes in these formats. And Rose and Scotty, well, they just don't make enough putts generally in this format to do well. So they're my long shots to have a look at. Mackenzie Hughes and Keegan Bradley.
Okay, well, I've got, in fact, my next 2 picks are directly correlated to both of those names. So I'll stay on the positive side of it. I have one agreement, one disagreement with you, Benny. I'll go with the agreement first for hole number 4. I've got Keegan Bradley coming out of that group with group 11, the only group with 4 major champions in the same group. Jordan Spieth is going to be a tough out. We get that. Then there's Adam Scott and Justin Rose, as you mentioned. Keegan Bradley with top 12 finishes in 4 starts so far this season, including a solo 5th in his last start at the Players Championship, plus 300 to advance out of that group. I do like Keegan a lot this week.
Good stuff. Okay, I'm going to go to now a group that you should look at and just enjoy yourself looking at it. And that's group 10. Now, I think you can go to this one and just have a crack. To me, it's one that it opens itself up. You've got Louis Oosthuizen at 200, who would be my choice, by the way, as the favorite out of that group. But then you've got Noren, another one who actually has done well, winning holes at this Austin Country Club before, 275. Paul Casey, a match play specialist, 225 in form. We just saw him play well at the Players. And Connors is a ball striking machine who, if he just putts half decent, could surprise all of them. So my point there is, you're looking for something to value, and it's sort of still going to give you a reasonable, you can have a reasonable chance on all 4 players. That's the group I like. You can look at it inversely and think, oh, how am I going to know which one wins? I just think you're just getting value for your guess, if you will, or your educated guess in that group. So Louis for me, but that is one to definitely have some fun with.
That is one where we should set an over-under of approach shots to miss the greens, because I don't think those guys are missing too much. 4 flushers in that group. All right. 6th hole, I'm going to go with a group 8 play. I mentioned a couple of corollaries to some guys you mentioned. You like Mackenzie Hughes in this group? I'm going to go Max Homa. Max Homa at plus 230 to get out of that group, to beat DJ, to beat Mackenzie Hughes. I think it's a nice play. Max Homa's been very solid lately. They also have Matthew Wolf in that group, who hasn't played his best golf lately, which is a shame, because I'm not sure anyone else's game matches up for these match play format as well as Matthew Wolf, who could go out there and just make tons of birdies, a couple of bogeys, doubles, triples, whatever it is, and not get too adversely affected by them. But I do think Homa's consistency will serve him well this week.
Tornado warnings going off here in Austin, all sorts of things going crazy, but we're back at hole 7. And look, I'm going to look at one of the groups that I did enjoy, group 14, I think it is. I really like my man Joaquin Niemann coming out of that 240. He wasn't favorite in the group there, so I figured there's some value. Brilliant, obviously, at the Genesis Invitational. Tricky little group with Russell Henley and Kevin Na, who, if they get their putter going, are ridiculously good in this type of format. The course, as I said, on the front 9 suits those two guys where the Bombers don't get any extra play. But if Niemann can get through those matches by surviving the front 9 and then unleashing on the back 9, I think he can do really well in this tournament. The wild card there is the last man in, Mav McNeely, who, if you're looking for a little bit of value, nothing to lose. What was he? 290, 300, 310 to come out of that?
Yeah.
But for me, I don't know why. I'm going big on Niemann. I think he's trending again.
I do like McNeely there. I thought it was very interesting that Niemann is the higher ranked player, and yet Henley is the shorter number. It's close, plus 220 to plus 240. But yeah, Henley is the favorite to get out of that group. All right. I've given you 3 players to get out of their group so far that weren't the favorites. I'm going to give you one who is the favorite, but I still think there's value. Group 1, number 1 ranked player in the world, Jon Rahm, top seed, plus 150 to get out of a group that includes Cameron Young, Sebastian Munoz, and Patrick Reed. I don't think that's a very tough group for Jon Rahm to advance from. I get it. Young's played some good golf lately. Munoz has been okay. Patrick Reed is a match play assassin, but he hasn't played great lately. If you combine Reed's intensity and fire with the form of Young or Munoz, I think you might have something, but that's not how it works. They're all separate players. And so I'm going Rahm at plus 150. Like I said, I think that's a really good number.
Yeah, I got him coming out of the group 2 there, mate. The only concern that I would have is that he's had a few putter woes lately.
Yeah.
But I actually told a mate of mine earlier today that I think this is the week that turns that around. I think the competitive fire in Rahm is going to come out. I think he'll make the putts that matter. And I think the fact that those other guys are somewhat, out of form or not really the matchup that can trouble him could be what makes things turn around just in time for Jon Rahm heading to Augusta in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
All right. The ninth
hole 9.
I got one funky one. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it now. There is a market that I found for biggest win of the week.
Yes.
Normally I would not go anywhere near something like this, but I saw that 5 and 4 was 12 to 1. Now, look, last year 6 and 5, I think, happened 3 times, and that ended up being the top mark. And there's been bigger. We've seen Tiger, the 10 and 8s and the 9s and the 8s, but I don't know why, but 5 and 4 for me seems like it could hit at 12 to 1. I liked that number. It just jumped out at me. I might have a little nibble there.
Benny, I swear, you and I have done no prep talk between us. We have not looked at each other's notes.
Yeah.
The next thing on my card, okay, as we make the turn, we go to the 10th hole. Next thing on my card says biggest match margin, 6 and 5, which you said, yeah, happened a few times last year, plus 150. I have 6 and 4 down at plus 1200. So if you're looking for a good value, either 5 and 4 or 6 and 4 for the biggest match margin for somebody to win this week. That's really funny that you and I are essentially on the same page with that. Maybe play them both at 12 to 1. You sort of double your chances of hitting one of those, and you're still looking at a total of 6 to 1 if you take them both together. So I think that's pretty good, a pretty smart play right there.
All right, 11th hole, mate. Now we're going to go into as I said, I'm going to go through the brackets of players, if you will, and sort of give you names I think can come out of the D groups, the C groups, the B groups, and the A, and effectively an A group, which, spoiler alert, my overall winner comes from one of the A brackets. And there's also a little bit of contradicting myself from earlier as well with that, but we'll get to that later. We'll start with 11th and my D player, my top D player that I think could contend and possibly win here, Bubba Watson. 65 to 1, former champion, plays well at Austin Country Club. I think it's 16 to 1 just to be in the top 4. I think there's a way he can get there. I've seen he has to get through, I think, Scheffler or one of the two to do that, but I think he can. And I think there's some value there as the D player, 65-1. Again, one of those players I mentioned earlier, 33% of the holes he's played at Austin Country Club, and he's been there for every version. He has won. So he knows how to get it done around this joint.
I like that. That I think, by the way, is the toughest, or one of the toughest. Maybe the Scheffler group might be the toughest to necessarily like pick a winner, but I think the most well-rounded group is that Answer, Simpson, Bubba Watson, Brian Harmon group, and I could see any of those guys getting out of there. Okay, I've got an interesting one here. In Group 7, Xander Schauffele's the favorite, and it's a weaker group, but it's weaker in that we could find some value somewhere. Takumi Kanaya, former number 1 ranked amateur in the world, plus 300 to get out of that group. Now, I don't mind it. In fact, I kind of like him. Might have to upset a Xander Schauffele and a Tony Finau, but it can happen. Those guys aren't playing great golf right now. What I think is really interesting is that for nationality props, for a low Asian for the week, for the Asian player to advance the most, Takumi Kanaya is plus 700. So he's plus 300 just to advance from his group, but plus 700 to only beat Sungjae Im and Siwoo Kim. And so I look at that and I go, there's tremendous value in that number. I don't quite understand why there's such a large disparity between the two, but I think Takumi Kanaya plus 700 low Asian and those nationality props on DraftKings this week is a really smart play.
Yeah, I was just looking to see who that he might have to come against, and you've let us know with Sungjae Im and Siwoo Kim. Now, Siwoo Kim obviously just can be lights out, but he can also shoot a million. So he's one to sort of steer clear off in the early rounds of these competitions, I think. But we'll go to the next hole for me. My B player that I've said to have a look at, Sungjae Im.
Oh.
I do think that Sungjae Im can make some waves in this tournament, given his ball striking prowess, although it hasn't been up to its usual standards of late. I do think he can come out of the group where, and then he will find himself in my bracket coming up against Scotty Scheffler a bit later on. But Sungjae Im,
he's got Cantlay and Killer Keith.
Yes, well, I know you're big on your man Keith Mitchell, and I know he'll be fired up and ready for the fight. I just think that first match is going to be one that takes out of both those guys. I think Keith Mitchell is going to play Patrick Cantlay back into form, and that could be a tie even. Yeah. And then I think that the guy who is going to sneak through because of that is Sungjae Im. Now, Seamus Power obviously been playing somewhat decent, but I think he's tiring and starting to fade a little. And yeah, I saw Im as the person who could sneak under the radar, if you will, after what I expect to be a huge Mitchell Cantlay match on Wednesday.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's going to be one of my favorite ones. I named about 6 on Twitter that are my matches to watch this week, and that's certainly one of them. Cantlay and Mitchell, 2 guys that I like a lot moving forward, and I want to see some form out of Cantlay before they get to Augusta in a couple of weeks' time, because he's a guy that I really like, but I've got to see something from him this week.
I don't like that 165 number out of his group.
Yeah,
I just think that's too short.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go to the 14th hole. I mentioned Taylor Gooch earlier. I like him so much that not only do I think he can get out of his group, but why not keep playing? Why not get to Sunday? Get all the way past Saturday. Taylor Gooch to reach the semifinals, finish in the top 4 this week at plus 1,600, 16-1. Look, it's a ball striker's golf course. The wind should blow there. It's usually a little exposed. And so if the wind starts blowing a little bit, Taylor Gooch is a good wind player. 16-1 feels like a good number to me.
All right. Well, I'm going to go into, what are we at now? 15th hole?
15th
hole. I'm going to give you someone out of the C bracket of players. This is the one that usually doesn't do that well. But given my very first pick this week was Leishman over Kisner, I am going to say Leishman top 4 is 14-1, I think, and 60-1 to win outright. I think if Marc Leishman can get past Kisner, then he gets a grudge match against Justin Thomas, of all people.
Yeah.
Another player who, he has very fired up to beat. I won't divulge all the extra information on that matchup, but let's just say it's another one which will have Leishman super fired up. And if he can get through that, I can see him actually getting a path and having a way through, all the way through to the final four, where he will probably meet some tough opposition. But, if the wind is up, he's your wind player. If he makes his putts, he'll be very difficult to beat.
I will save my thoughts on that one for a minute because let's just say I'm not fading Justin Thomas this week. But as we get to hole 16, I'm going to give you one of my long shot plays. And it's a guy that I look, he's high risk, high reward. He's got a high ceiling, but a very low floor. You mentioned this about Siwoo Kim. I feel very much the same way about Thomas Pieters. He's in Group 12, has to go against Billy Horschel, the defending champion. But I think he can take on Horschel. Tom Hoagie, I know a lot of people like right now, but I'm okay with fading Hoagie a little bit. Minwoo Lee has not shown much since coming over to the U.S. So Thomas Pieters, look, plus 250 to get out of his group, plus 2,500 to reach the semifinals. That's 25 to 1 to get to the final four, and then 100 to 1 for an outright play. It's got a lot of offensive firepower, plays some aggressive golf, might make a big number here and there, but that doesn't bother me too much in this format whatsoever.
Man, back in the day after Hazeltine, you would never have thought he'd be this far down the list at this point in time. You would have thought he would have been a top 10 player in the world by now.
31st, really. He's getting there. I mean, he's actually climbed back, scratched back to a point where he's got a pretty good number next to his name now.
I do love the bloke too. He definitely loves the competition. And I'll tell you what he doesn't like, Americans. So anytime he goes up against American, anytime he goes up against a Yank, you might want to back him. All right, look, my A player, if you will, my actual tip to win the whole thing, which flies in the face of the upset I said way earlier, is Dustin Johnson. He has been forgotten. And I think, just like I said before, when I said I think a few guys are going to be played into form, Rahm, I think, is one of them. Cantlay is going to get some juice going again, I feel like, this week as the Masters comes up. I think Dustin Johnson is so far forgotten, despite the fact that he's still obviously a great player and wasn't that long ago number one player in the world. Former champion here. I think that if he's got his head screwed on, he has a path right the way through that looks not too difficult. Although, he would meet Rahm at some point, and that would be an absolute blockbuster if they did in the final 8. I'd love to see that happen. So I'm liking DJ. I haven't got a lot of gravitas behind it. He obviously hasn't been in great form. He obviously he's had some issues, but I just feel like this is one of those weeks where you throw half the form out the window and see what happens. And he's a competitive little bugger. I expect big things. And look, my actual final four, if you want to look at the bracket, is DJ, Scheffler, Schauffele, and Leishman. But look, Leishman, as I said before, is that there's a lot of that to do with emotion and the fact that I'm Aussie and I think he's got some good grudge matches to go up against. You can easily take Leishman out and put JT in, same group. Justin Thomas, I think he would make the run all the way through if he came out of that group as well. So we rarely see it, but imagine we could have DJ, Scheffler, Schauffele, and JT in the final four. We've been killing for something like that in this tournament for a long time.
It's never going to happen. I'm just convinced it's never going to happen, but I'm glad you said, and you admitted that we could take Leishman out and put JT in there, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. I came into this with no preconceived notions. I came into this not saying, hey, when the brackets come out, my winner is going to be so-and-so. I literally went through match by match, went down the whole bracket list, pitted guys against each other. And at the end, I came up with my favorite outright, Justin Thomas. Look, my advice is to play some bigger numbers this week. I wasn't looking to play a guy with a short number because that usually doesn't cash. Billy Horschel was 32nd in the field as far as seeding last year. 2 years before that, in the previous edition, Kevin Kisner was 48th. And so it doesn't usually play out that one of the game's best players goes out and wins this thing. But we saw Justin Thomas compete again and contend at the Valspar Championship. He's now got top 8 finishes in 7 of his last 10 starts. He said afterwards, patience, patience, patience. It's coming. He knows a big one is coming. I don't think he's superstitious about, hey, let's not win 2 weeks before the Masters. I want to save it all up for Augusta National. He'd be just fine going out and getting a trophy this week, then taking a week off and going to get a green jacket after that. And it very well could happen. He's playing some great golf right now. If he figures out that putter over the next few days, watch out for Justin Thomas. Really like him this week. And Benny, since you gave your final four, mine is JT, Pieters, Casey, and Gooch. I don't think you and I have any of the same picks this week. So hopefully we have thoroughly flummoxed all the listeners out there.
Well, look, mate, it's just, as I said, that's what happens with this. And the beauty is just get in and watch these, mate, to get the listeners out there. This is a fantastic tournament. It's my favorite outside of the President's Cup, Ryder Cup. It's my favorite that we have all year. I love seeing these guys come out of their shell and get into the competition, if you will, phase of golf, the head-to-head mano. You really find out which guys are there for trophies and which guys are there for cash. Let me tell you that. You find out who wants to win, who cares. And I mean, that's why I've got little Xander there in my top four, mate. Even though, can you believe this? I'd look back at this. He's had 3 cracks at this at Austin. He's had the chance on his own shoulders to get out of the group all 3 times. He has let himself down each time. Last year, it was Scheffler who was playing in that final match on Friday. They tied through 18 holes and had to then keep going. Sudden death, the way these things work out before he fell to Scheffler, who ended up going on and winning the whole thing. But yeah, in previous years, Xander lost to Rafa Cabrera-Bello when he had the group on the line. And I think the year before that, it was someone even less noteworthy, when he could have actually, gone all the way through. Let me have a quick look here and I'll tell you, but it was, Sergio. So he's pretty noteworthy. I'll say that. He lost to Sergio Garcia and Rafa Cabrera-Bello in 18 and 19 when he had the group in his own hands. He just had to win his final match and he was in, but he wasn't able to do it. I know that he's the type that would sort of burn three times in a row, have the chance to go through and not do it.
It's a good point.
That'd be something that is, got him fired up.
Good point. All good points there from Ben Everill. Thanks so much to everybody out there for listening. Good luck trying to figure this stuff out, because this is as hard as they come for the entire year. But thank you for listening to this edition of the Links and Locks podcast. As always, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Download, subscribe, rate, and listen every single week. For Ben Everill, I'm Jason Sobel. Good luck with your bets for the WGC Dell Technologies match play. Here's hoping you hit the green.